Right, Yeshu Koyach. So, it's Chodesh Elul, and there's a lashon of the Rebbe's father. He sent the Rebbe instructions for the way he should conduct himself on the day of the Chasana. And he writes that on the day of your Chasana you should learn a Perek Tanya. And he writes that you should learn it deeply in not in a way of exposition, but in a way of connection. A kavana v'loy be'iyun. So I think when we talk about Chodesh Elul and learning a maimer about tshuva, so there's something different in the tone when we learn a tshuva maimer. And the Rebbe writes that the topic of tshuva is discussed endlessly. The Rebbe uses such a lashon. So there are a few things to talk about. And these are all words, and words fall short from really, we're talking about the human psyche, and when you say charata is just a word. What does it, what does it mean? So I just want to speak about a little bit some of the things that Hasidus discusses, and also how our psychological makeup fits in this discussion. So the first thing is that one of the motives or one of the frameworks that allow us to do Averis is the incremental interaction with the inappropriate things. In other words, it's a nibble. We nibble a little bit at Inyane Isur, and they feel less harmful when they come incrementally. A person tells a small lie. The idea of Hayom Omer Le'aseh Kach and Machar Omer Le'aseh Kach. So in a person, in our own experience, we allow ourselves to cheat a little bit, and eventually whether or not eventually it compounds in a certain way, a person could in their mind sustain a continuous state of engagement with what's inappropriate as long as it's managed, as long as it's only a little bit, in whatever way, however it manifests in a person's, in a person's life, in whatever the different ways are. So that's one Indian. It's the shtus of, I do small averis. Generally speaking, I do the right thing. Here, there, in other words, I put on tefillin every day. I daven and so on and so forth. Okay, I missed Krishma in the morning. That's the small stuff. Generally, I'm a frum yid. So that's one Indian. The second aspect is when we think about our actions in the context of our own self-worth or our own self-importance. In other words, if a person feels, right? I'm saying this in an extreme way. If a person feels that the opportunities of today could land them a job that's going to pay them $1 million a year, whatever. They have an interview today, it's an incredible opportunity. So they don't want to miss it. But if in their mind they're like, no, so today I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do. No. All right. I'm not so chashuv, and today is not so defining, it's not so significant, it's not so important. We minimize our own value. In other words, if a person were to say, you go to a class about, it's before the school year, you should be involved with your kids' chinuch, you should do their homework 4 days a week. And a person's thinking to himself, so there's one idea where someone says, okay, I'll do 3, not 4. So that's the ruach shtus of the nibbling. Oh yeah, a little bit less. But then there's someone else who's like, look, you think I could really impact? Like, who are we kidding? He goes to yeshiva and he has good friends, and there's so much good going on that's going to make a difference that I'm going to make the difference. Better let him learn with a tutor. Let him in other words, I'm not really such a chashuv guy. I can't make such an impact. So that's the reverse, that a person, they don't see their own worth. I'm not worthy enough to invest in, or the things that I do wrong are not so significant. So that's the reverse. There's the action being nibbling, and then there's a person's sense of worthlessness. I'm not worthy enough that it should matter what I do right or wrong. We learn Chassidus. Chassidus comes along and says, there's a lashon in Chazal, G'doi la tshuva shemevia refuah la'olam. It's a Gemara. Tshuva brings a refuah to the world. The question is, what do you mean it brings a refuah to the world? It brings a refuah to the person. What does it mean? La'olam. So, actually when a person does something wrong, the impact of what they're doing wrong is of global significance. It has a hashpah on the whole world. And when we do something right, it has a hashpah on the whole world. And that's very easy to read in a book. But it's not so easy that a person should feel that it's real, that my actions have such an incredible effect. And that's part of the continuous effort of our own personal nefesh habahamis, to continuously minimize in our hearts our own self-worth. How great is our impact? Sometimes a person approaches someone and tells them something that they said or that they did that had such significance for them. And there's a possibility that you may not even remember that happened. And that's in simple terms, whatever it is, that Hashem positions us in ways that we could actually see how we did something how we accomplished something very determining. I was once at I don't remember exactly the framework, but people were talking about, I think it was some kind of meeting about the challenge of shidduchim and so on and so forth. And one of the people who spoke mentioned how, sometimes people approach someone to ask them about a person, and it's not that they're not complimentary, but they share a feeling of hesitation. And it may not be based on any, and just that feeling, so because of that, you got in the way, you interfered with, for no reason, with someone, going on a date or getting a shidduch, to realize the impact. And these are things that, he could say, Maisim b'chol yom. These are real things that happen on a daily basis. So these are ways in which Hashem shows us how a small thing could make a difference in such an incredible way. But the way it is, be'emes, is that it's much greater. The significance has a much greater impact, and much more meaning, and so on. So that's within the power of the person, how great a person is. Then there's another inyan. What in a certain way, what is a mitzvah? What is a mitzvah? Right? A mitzvah, we had this discussion a few weeks ago is that, people have a particular love language. The idea of a love language is not, it's a subconscious thing. Everyone may appreciate, I like to give an example, right? I like to give an example just to highlight this idea. You have a parent who says, I have a child that needs extra chizuk. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a special evening out. We're going to spend some time together. For this child, quality time is not their love language. Their love language is gifts. The parent spends an hour with the kid, and then when he comes home, one of his other children mentioned to him that he needs a watch. And the father, for $10, he bought a watch. A little thing. And as he walks into the house with this child that we just spent an hour with, he turns around to the other kid and he's like, oh, by the way, you asked me for a watch, here's a watch. So this child, whose love language is a gift, who you just spent an hour with and did not buy a gift, watches how you showered the other child with love. And all of it that wasn't your intention. It's just that people naturally, subconsciously have certain things that make them feel very special. Mitzvahs make Hashem feel very special. Why? That's Hashem's love language. So, what happens when what does it mean? It's Hashem's love language. And I'm not trying to say this in a way that's being mezalzel, fakert. Meaning it's very deep. It's subconscious. And that's the idea. We say mitzvahs are not mitzvahs elikim. They're mitzvahs of Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya means it transcends all the spheres. The spheres are all logical. Chassidus explains that when countries go to war, there's a cheshbon. How much are we going to spend? And what are we protecting? How much is the oil worth? How much is what are the natural resources worth? And there's an exchange. So it's all calculated. The whole world of spheres is all a cheshbon. Mitzvahs are super rational. For some reason, Hashem is tickled pink. He feels so special that a person did a mitzvah, you can't explain it. Meaning, it's not chokhmah, bina, chesed, gvura. It's not any of those things. So that's why the mitzvahs are called mitzvahs havaya, yud ke vav ke. Like we'll read inside, he says, there's the vidui in the Shema, that different mitzvahs is brought from the Zohar, that the mitzvahs are like a bunch of grapes hanging on a vine. So the vine, that's Shem Havaya, and some grapes are in the letter Yud, and some grapes are in the letter Hey, but the idea is that it's Hashem himself. I want to share something for a moment that's a little bit a deeper idea in Hasidus. In general, when in our koiches, we have koiches that are mundane, that are simple, and then we have deeper koiches, higher koiches. In the experience of learning is that's a higher part of the nefesh. When a person learns something basic from someone else, it's not a big deal. When a person learns something profound from someone, they get a very strong connection. So the more pnimius something is, the deeper, the more connected you feel with the other person. So there's pnimius and there's chitzonius. When we talk about, let's say, Hasidus uses the idea, we're learning in Rambam, the halachis of Nazir. If a person says that his hand is a Nazir, so he's not a Nazir. If a person says his liver is a Nazir, he's a Nazir because it's an Aver, you can't live without it. So there are extremities. A person, Rahman al-Islam, could lose an arm, could lose a leg, but he could survive. And then there are things that we can't live without. So there's pnimius and there's chitzonius. Now it's true that there's pnimius and chitzonius, but the whole person is alive. Chayus is the ultimate pnimius. It's the real depth. But you can't say, oh, you're less chay in your finger. What do you mean? To be alive, the whole person is equally alive. In other words, there's something about chayus that it overrides this whole measuring of how important is it to me. In other words, if this is my body, then I give you, my neshama gives chayus to its whole body. Why? Because it's my body. This is my neshama, so this is my body, my neshama is mechaya, the whole body. In mitzvahs, Shem Havaya is like the chayus of all the mitzvahs. You can't really separate. Hashem himself. You can't say, oh, this is more important, less important. Hashem, it's my mitzvahs. So Hashem is so tied up, so connected with mitzvahs, that it means the world. One mitzvah, yichud nitzchi, it's unbelievable. It's a tremendous connection. Now if a person does an aveira, if a person takes an aveira, it's not just that you ask someone to do something and they didn't do it for you. You disrespected their pnimius. Right? In other words, I don't mean to, it's like, let's say, for whatever reason, a person's married, their wife has an aversion to socks being left around. There could be a lot of things that are needed in the house, but for some reason, if the socks are laying out, that's the world ended, for whatever reason it is. And this person, he does everything else, but this that is the most important thing that you forgot. So that's like, it's such disrespect. You know that that's what's important to me. I'm not, that's like the union of Aveira. We have a pasuk chumash. The lashon is v'noikev shem Hashem. Noikev means to pierce. A person who punctures, who puts a hole through Hashem's name. What does that mean? When a person does an Aveira, Hashem is vulnerable in the mitzvahs. I love mitzvahs. There's nothing like a mitzvah. There where it matters so much to Hashem, that's where you hurt him. So says the Tzemach Tzedek, we'll read soon inside, just like the human body. As soon as you cut through the skin, right away there's blood. By Shem Hashem, as soon as you puncture, as soon as you hurt Hashem, right away there's blood. Right away there's a leak. You're giving chayas because there's such intense kedusha in the mitzvahs. When a person does an aveira, that energy, an aveira meaning to burn, right? In other words, Hashem says not to do it, you do it. Right away, you create a hole in Shem Havaya, you draw that passion, that energy, that chayas into klippa. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. I don't remember exactly the details, whatever it was. The general idea was there was a porush. He used to fast all week. And I don't know it, but okay. So anyway, once a week, at that Friday, they would bring him a glass of milk and maybe something to eat. I don't recall exactly what it was. And then one week, either they forgot to bring it or it spilled, something happened, and he passed away. And the Baal Shem Tov later said that his whole Metzius he was getting from the yeshes, from the glass of milk, and like they took it away. So, in other words, some people, their whole chayas comes from their rage that someone didn't do what I wanted them to do, what I wanted should be done. The whole klippe, what's mechaya the klippe? That it's an aveira, that it's against what Hashem wants. Right, what does the word siphon mean? There's energy being sucked. The klippe is continuously drawing from Hashem through the hole that a person who did the aveira caused. You have a pasuk. I believe it's in Yirmiyahu. He brings it here also. What happens? Hashem says to a person, "This is wrong. Don't do it." Let me try it. Right? You try it. You get away with it until the lashon in Chazal is. It has to hit you over the head. It has to become such a large stumbling block that you can't ignore it anymore. And then you say, I think it was a mistake that I did that to begin with. But by the time you're there, we're in a different place. So the truth of the Aveira is that it's Noikev Shem Hashem, that you're causing pain by the Eibishter. Then there's our own experience. So we go from thinking that what we do is insignificant until we learn the chashivus of everything that we do. I read once in a sefer, like in the Hoysofis in the back. I don't remember which one it was. It had like a calculation, a computation, that if a person learns Torah for a certain amount of time, how many mitzvahs he gets for learning Torah at that moment. And he makes a cheshbon that you could have been speaking Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara equals, each word of Lashon Hara has like a few Averis. And you multiply that by the number of words so you were avoided all of those lois haseis. And then you have all the mitzvahs haseis. Anyway, it's thousands and thousands of mitzvahs. 1 hour of learning Torah, unbelievable. I thought to myself, I don't know, it didn't have a feel of a Chabad Chassid, that kind of mindset, Here, when you learn the Maimer, and a person says, you say to yourself simply that number one, my actions are significant. Number two, I'm a mitzvah yid. And some of you heard the story from me, but not everyone. The incredible story. Reb Mendel Futterfass, he told us, not in a way of ego, just in a matter-of-fact way, that when he was in a prison camp in Siberia, in the Gulag, the first year that he was imprisoned, he received matzah before Pesach. The first night of Pesach, he was eating matzah, and you say, "Hey lachmanya," and he thought to himself, "Who knows what's going to be next year? Who knows if my family is going to be able to send me a package? Who knows?" Usually, the Russians would not give you your mail until after Pesach. They knew that the Yidden were waiting for matzah, and you weren't allowed to go to the post office every day. Someone had to tell you there's a package. So other Yidden didn't have. So he thought, who knows what's going to be? And eating matzah the first night of matzah is a mitzvah. So he took a kazayis matzah, whatever. He took one matzah, and he decided that he's going to save it. He's going to hold it with him. He's going to carry it a whole year, that he should be able to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah the first night of Pesach the next year. And Bepoyel Mamish, he carried, wrapped in a plastic, whatever it was to keep dry, he carried a matzah an entire year in his pocket to be able to be Mekayim, the mitzvah of Achilas matzah. And so on and so forth. Yidden, we can't even be masig what it is by a yid, poshet the preciousness to do a mitzvah. I have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. So that's our life. What's our life? Our life is we wake up in the morning to do a mitzvah, to serve the Eibishter. And it's a different, right? We see in the world of shlichus, there are some people who live mamish in this frame of mind. Every day, how do I bring another mitzvah, So in that's the asay toiv, right? The antithesis. Now we're chodesh Elul. Now we think about the things we have to correct. But throughout the year, to live poshet with such an incredible awareness of the power that we have to do a mitzvah. Let's read a little bit inside. So the Tzemach Tzedek begins with the loshen of the chinuch. So the chinuch begins lihisvadois mitzvah shin samach daled, lihisvadois al ha'avonos, to confess, im hatshuva. So along with tshuva, there has to be vidui dvarim. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, v'hisvadu es chatosam asher osu, that they confess their averis. Pirish, what's the meaning of these words by the chinuch? She'ikir mitzvahs tshuva min ha'torah hi azivas achet. What's tshuva? The chinuch didn't explain what tshuva is. Tshuva is azivas hachet, abandoning the sin. Right? I will not do that action again. And the havidui ubakashas mechila, to confess and to ask forgiveness. I just want to mention that yesterday I was at Kinus HaMechanechim. So Rab David Dubov spoke. So he was saying that one of his rabbis used to share interesting ideas, just to excite the students, to whet their appetite to learning. So he asked the students, it says that you can't have a stolen lulav. In the summertime in camp, they were learning lulav hagozel. So he says, why not? Not to steal is a mitzvah's lois aseh. Ulekachtem lochem is a mitzvah's aseh. Mitzvah's aseh, esed deicha lois aseh. So the mitzvah's aseh of taking a lulav pushes away the negative commandment. It's a good question. So he says, so Rabbi Yisrael Lavkovsky said that there's a Chasam Sofer. The Chasam Sofer says that this principle, that Esed Deicha Lois Aseh, only applies Bein Adam LaMokim, not Bein Adam LaChaveiroi. It's not that, I have to do a mitzvah, so therefore I could harm you. Right? Gzeila, you harmed another yid. He says we don't find anywhere in Shas that the mitzvahs aseh overrides a mitzvahs lois aseh that affects another person. It's like, you're allowed to slap someone, so you should. There's no such thing, right? So let's remember that the viduyu bakashas mechila applies in both inyanim. Sai in the Bein Adam LaMokim, that we say vidui to Hashem, and then also Bein Adam LaChaveiroi, vidui and bakashas mechila. Those are the two inyanim. Vidui is Bein Adam LaMokim, and bakashas mechila is Bein Adam LaChaveiroi. K'meshikosav beigeres hashuva perak aleph b'shem harambam usmad. These are rishonim to talk about what is tshuva. We need to explain Sheidish Inyan based Varim Elu. What is the source of these two aspects? Sheheim. Aleph, the first is Azivas Hachet Ala Haba. Ubeklal Zeh, included in letting go of the Averis, is Charota Ala Avar. Because if we regret, how do we know that we truly won't do something again? Because we regret it. Like the Rambam writes in Perek Beis of Ilchas Tshuva, Hanikra Tshuva. Beis, the second part, is Vidui, Hanikra Bakashas Mechila. Where do these two things stem from? Kedisa Rambam Perek Aleph. Ma Inyonom, what is it? Why do they have the power? Shebazeh Yechuper Loi Ala Pagamim She'asa. How does this bring forgiveness? That you You verbalize it. You say, no. So you said. It says like this: Hine a mitzvahs nekroi mitzvahs havaya. Lefisha kol in yonam hu. What are the mitzvahs? Hamshoches v'gilui eirein soiv b'shem havaya. It draws down the essence of Hashem. Ki eirein soiv baruch hu mitzad atzmai. These are ideas that they're a little bit haskoladik, but to understand the concept that, Chassidus explains. We had this discussion when we were learning Pashas Vayera, that the Eser Sfiris, it's like when a person sees, their eyes see, or their soul sees. The eyes are conduits. The eyes bring, yes, they're an instrument, but they bring what you see to you. You're the one experiencing it. The Eibishter has midas HaChesed. The midas HaChesed of the Eibishter is a window to Shem Havaya. The mitzvah is connecting to Hashem. Right? I'm sorry that I always quote this line from the whatever it was. I don't have to repeat now the one who said it, but the White House, she said, I could explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. Right? In other words, verstehen, to understand, you have to understand yourself. Raf allein verstehen. So, the inyan of mitzvah is to draw down Eirein Soif, the Eibishter himself, into Shem Havaya. Ki Eirein Soif Baruch Hu mitzad atzmei, the Eibishter himself, lav mikalinu midas klal. He transcends midas. And he transcends chokhmah. Nikra Chakim b'Chochmah, in order that we should refer to Hashem as the wise one, and Maven, the one who understands, Maven b'Bina, Sheheim Chochmah and Bina are Yudke of Shem Havaya. V'chein, so too the emotive powers, Lias Chosid b'Chesed, Giber b'Gvura, Chulu, Shezeu Seid Vovke. How do we engage the Eibishter? How do we draw Hashem's interest into Atzilus? Hu al yidei ma'isa mitzvahs. It's through mitzvahs that Hashem becomes connected to the world. In other words, we say in the Bar Mitzvah Maimer, Hashem is asleep. Vayikatz kiyoshin avaya, right? The Eibishter is asleep. When we're not doing mitzvahs, the Eibishter withdraws from the world. It's b'bchinas shina. It's like it's asleep. Through mitzvahs, we draw, Hashem is interested again, he woke up. How do we do that? Isarusa de la Sata, Isarusa de la Eila. Ava deichekes, Ava causes, right, when there are a lot of yeshiva bacharim, they're going somewhere on Miftzoyim, they can fit like a dozen bacharim into a small car. Right? Why? Because there's Ava, they're close, so they make room. The Eibishter, the Ava of Hashem, he allows himself to kvetch into the most confined spaces because he loves it. There's a lashon that the Alter Rebbe brings, unbelievable lashon, about the Eibishter going to the Yidden in Mitzrayim. The Yidden, Mitzrayim was the lowliest place in the world, right? It was the red district. In Mitzrayim, they were the slaves in Mitzrayim. You could think about Mamash, the lowest element in society. And the Eibishter went, Va'at Eirin Ve'eriyo, the Eibishter went and he lifted up the Yidden. So the Lashon that's brought is like a king that went to Shuka de Bursaki. The tannery, it has a horrible smell. It's terrible. You're not allowed to daven by a tannery. It's the most filthy place. And the Eibishter went to go find the Yidden, to go find this Kala, soiled and smelly in the Shuka de Bursaki, because that's who he loves. So the Ava of Hashem to the Yidden, it's like completely senseless. It makes no sense. The Eibishter, he can marry anybody. But for some reason, it's a chvalipt in the Yidden, he loves the Yidden, and he went to such a place. So here, so too, through mitzvahs, the mitzvahs are so exciting to the Eibishter that he abandons everything and he kvetches himself from being Eirein Seif and without any tziyur. He's like, what do I need to be? Chacham and Chassid and all the different midas. I'm there. I want to be there. Lias mitzamtzim b'midas elu kedei lahoir ulahachiyes oilemus, to give life to the worlds. V'yesh me'ah mitzvahs shetluyim b'yud. There are those mitzvahs that are the yud of Hashem's name. V'yesh, and there are those that are the hey. U'kameshikosu b'zoyhar, like the Zohar writes, ke'invin, like grapes, right? Anovim, detalyon, that are hanging, be'eshkoil, be'askala. In Aramaic and Hebrew, the shin and the tuf are exchangeable, right? In Hebrew, an ox is a shoyer. In Aramaic, an ox is toyer with a tuf. You have that many times. So here, eshkoil is a bunch of grapes, and all you do is switch the shin and a tuf. Ask, so you have that word. So it's a eshkoil, it's like a bunch of grapes. V'lachein, that's why the mitzvahs are called evarim de malka, that they're called the limbs of the king. She'eses firis hanal him k'meguf. They're like a body to the oir hamislabish b'teicha me'irin sev baruch ha'idei hamitzvahs. That's why I gave the example previously of chayas. In chayas, the whole body is alive. You don't say, oh, this is more important, less important, this is the brain, this is the hand. No, it's chay. The Eibishter is mechaya the world. He just, through mitzvahs, we bring him all the way into the world. This is the meaning of tamim tia im havaya. Be whole. Fulfill all the mitzvahs that you can. Lahamshich ramach evarim v'tzior koima. Give the Eibishter the full, I don't know what the right word is, a silhouette or face, I don't know what give him the full experience. So all of this so far, we're learning about a person who does mitzvahs. Ach im chota ala nefesh. If a person did an aveira, whether it's bebitul mitzvahs asay, oy be'avre alois asay, hari oisamum, the body is incomplete. In the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael, here in Derech Mitzvah Secha, the Tzemach Tzedek writes, imagine a person going to the Eibishter to daven, and he's missing body parts. Why? Because he doesn't have Avos Yisrael. All the Yidden together make up one Koima Achas Shleima. If I don't like someone, I cut off a toe. And now I'm coming to the Eibishter showing him that I got rid of part of my body. Ki memait hamshachas hachayis be'isamidos fira. He's diminishing, allowing Hashem to enter the world. V'gam mamshich me'achayis shebetoichon teisefes yenika le'im ke'aklipis. He also causes, he draws elikus into klipa. And here, the Tzemach Tzedek speaks in very strong terms. He says, a person is causing to give klipa more beyeser se'es. You're giving them more chayis al ma sheniktzav lahem ayirei kav hamida mibechinas acherayim de acherayim bulvad. The Eibishter has a plan for klipa. They're supposed to have traces of chayis bebechinas acherayim. So what happens? This Yid comes along, and he takes pnimius achayis, a neshama, and he's mamshich lohem mipnimius hashefa hamalubish bekelim diyut sfiris. He's taking mamish elikus, panim al panim of the Eibishter, and he's delivering it b'imkei aklipis. V'gadol avoyne ma'oid. It's a terrible, it's a tremendous aveir. Meshikosav v'yiger satshuva perek zayin. Shezeu soid. This is the meaning of the words melech asur barahotim. The pasuk in Shir Hashirim. I don't know the correct English word for rahotim. So when they would feed the animals, they have such a long bucket, where they put the water in, like what we imagine by Rivka. So there's some kind of word, that's rahotim. Trough. Yashakoyach. So the Hashem is imprisoned in these troughs. The troughs that's the place, the flowing of thoughts that are going in the wrong direction. But the Eibishter is giving you chayas. The Eibishter is being mechaya yid, who's using his machshava to wander into who knows where. And Hashem is in Golus, in those machshavas. Ve'ein lecha elbin gadol mizeh. There's no greater shame. V'lachein nikra Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's why Hashem is referred to as Melech Oluv. Yeah, as the king, the shamed king. V'zeu seid apgam. This is also the meaning of Chassidus of im pagamti beis yud, im pagamti beis hey, etc. Okumesha Kosov, the pasuk says, "V'noikev Shem Hashem." He pierces Shem Hashem. Shenoikev chas v'shalom hakelim de yutzvirus u'moitzi ha'er shebeteichon lachitzonim. He's siphoning off the chayas in the mitzvahs and delivering them to klippah. Kenoikev Ever. When a person pierces a body part, Yotzedam Hashem Yirachim. Right away, blood spritzes out of the body. So right away, the chayas of Hashem, because Hashem is so invested in mitzvahs, it gets drawn right away into klippah. B'chdei l'sakein zeh, to correct this, Hashem gifted us. Tzivonu Hashem Yizbarech b'reiv rachamo. Hashem, with His great rachmanis, with His great compassion on us, Hashem gave us a mitzvah, and it's mitzvahs hatshuva. And the tshuva is mevia refuah la'olam, and it's mashlemes apgamim. It seals, it heals those wounds in Shem Havaya. Hanal. You know, it's like when a person there are certain parts of the car, if they have a leak, you can put in a treatment that will, a sealant. Yeah, that we need some mumchim to give us. It plugs the gap. In the antifreeze, the chveizvu, and this and that. I don't know. AC. Yeah. So there's the mitzvah of tshuva is memali the pagomim. It stems, it seals where the chayas is leaking. How do we correct these holes? He says, there are two things that need to happen. Generally, he's going to... One is we have to restore what we took away. Now the elikus space has less chayas. Then there's a second union. Beis lahavir yunikas achetzonim, to take away the chayas that was given to klippah, which in that itself there are two aspects. You know, in Tehillim, David HaMelech speaks about his enemies, and Chassidus explains that when a person does Averis, he creates enemies, entities that place. For some reason, I think it's not opening today. We have to try again. He creates enemies that pursue him. You know, I was telling a chaver, now we're preparing for the school year, and I said to him, I feel that all the things the Eibishter is taking care of are working out perfectly. Kafter v'ferach. All the things I'm doing are imperfect. They're problems. Like what the Eibishter's, his solutions are fantastic. And every day it's like, I get a phone call, hello? Maybe you need something, this, that. Oh, the Eibishter showed up. It's gewaldig. I couldn't have asked for anything better. So, to be mashlin, to restore the chayas of elikus, that's one Indian. Then there's to remove. I gave chayas to inyani klippah that are now obstacles. So now, how do we take care of that? How are we mavir yunikas achitzonim? So he says, chavoras yunikas achitzonim gufa. There are two in yonim. Aleph, one thing is shulayenko et b'yaser. They shouldn't take more chayas. They're siphoning chayas. How do we cut that off? And Beis lahavir mashakvar also, to remove what was done before. It says like this: V'hinei Beis chalukas harishonis hu ha'idei amshoras erin sof mal ma'ila b'bchinas makif. The first two in yonim. How do we stem their chayas? How do we restore Shem Havaya? That's through introducing the makif. The koyach of tshuva is a great light. It's a person that resolve that from now on I am going to do what Hashem wants. That's a great light. It's mesame eine achitzonim shelayenko. It blinds the klippus. The gam hu memali kol apgomim. It also fills the holes. Because the Eibishter is shlimu dokulu, v'chula kameketiba meyokyainus, only hoide alaretz v'shamayim, like it's explained elsewhere, and that's ki mitzvah azois, which is tshuva. Loi nifleisim imcha is going to explain later. Tshuva is not too far; it's not impossible. V'hu ha'yidei tshuva v'acharotok meshizboy mitzvah Shem perek beis, like he's going to explain weiter. And let's learn this inyan now. We'll finish with this inyan. Is lahavi yinikas achitzonim sheriba b'ma'oid. So hine lazet tzarich vidu dvarim imacharot. If a person wasn't honest with someone, so that guy doesn't want to work with you, how do you fix it? Right? A person that goes out, he can't get a job. You know what do we find? People come out of prison. And they want so hard to turn their life around, but you can't get a job. Every company, they do a background check, they ask you for your this and that, and they're finished. So what's he saying here? When a person is set up in such a place, you have to do vidu yibakashas mechila. You have to go around to the people and you have to level with them. That you have to restore. That's how you restore. I'm saying it in very pasha ta'isius. It's not going to help you with the background check, but in this inyan, one-on-one. So that's the vidu dvarim imacharota, and he explains al pi chassidus why that is. It says ve'inyan kimeida zois she'aklipis yesh lehem gam kein. We have 5 minutes, right? Yeah. It's known that klipis also have a guf and a nefesh. Yeshlam gamken oir v'keli, nefesh v'guf. V'hishavusam, both parts, when a person does an aveira, he creates a body and a soul. Al yidei, how does that happen? Who? Ki al yidei atayve, the passion that he has, the lust for this inyan, mishave ha-nefesh hara, rachman litzlan, that's the spirit. V'al yidei ha-maisa, then there's the maisa aveira, mishave ha-guf. Whether it's thought, like irhurim royim, like inappropriate thoughts. So may ha'isius, just from those words, mishava haguf shel haklipa anal. Umin ha'taive, from the desire, mishava ha'nefesh. If the dibur is lashon hara, the chilas al derech mashal, it's a dibur. Shavuas shov, a false oath, or a sheker, v'kayotze. So the words become bodies, and the passion, the desire to lie, the motivation to lie becomes the nefesh. Kol shekein b'maisa, of course, when a person does an action, shemizeh mishava aguf shel haklipa, and that becomes a body of klipa, and then from the desire, minatay v'shebelev, neitzer hanefesh shel haklipa. The kol zehu, why? How do you provide all of this? How do you provide? I remember reading once, it says, I think I was reading it by the Mittler Rebbe, I'm sure it says in many places, that Rabbi Akiva, one machshava from Rabbi Akiva could give chayas like a lot of people nowadays. Our neshamas, a whole group, 100 yidden nowadays, one machshava from Rabbi Akiva could be mechai, give us all chayas me'ev esrim shana. So we have a neshama. Because we have a neshama, our machshavas have life in them. They could be mechaya, the klipa. So therefore, kol zel fi she'adam mushrish l'mayla beses viris dikdusha. Val yedei kain, al yedei hatayve v'hamaisa, when you couple together the action and the desire, so there's a being. Mamshich lem nefesh v'guf miyanika shem yutzviris commissioners by Lil. That's the meaning. My sin is before me at all times. Why? Not that I remember it, because it's a living being. It continuously remains a living being. It stands against him, to make it, to some eng machen. How do we say it in English? To contrite. Yeah.
Holds them down.
Eng. Now restricted, to restrict you. It holds you down. That the Ra itself punishes. It's his own maisim that hurt him. Kedisa b'zayar. V'hinei k'sheshov v'nayid dos tshuva hazai tzorich lohamis as ha-klippes hanal. We have to kill the klippe to wipe them out. La'aviram min ha'olam k'diksiv machisi k'ov b'shoecha. V'zeu al yedei. That's through charota. And then the dibur, the vidui dvarim, takes away the goof of the aveira. Anyway, we have to learn the noch. I'm going to hold on to the copies. Maybe we'll be mamshich next week. Thank you all for coming and making this possible.